killing myself with the food I eat, toxic to my health, till I got the news. There's another path that I could choose, and now I am resolved.
Welcome to the New Health Conversation television show, coming to you live from our Denver, Colorado studios on Comcast Channel 56, also on the internet at consciousevolutionmedia.com. And I'm your host and moderator, Coach Steve Toth. And let me introduce you to some of these great gentlemen that are sitting next to me, starting with Peter Greenlaw, who is known as the world's most prominent investigative scientist. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Steve.
And also next to Peter is Colin Greenlaw. That's Peter's son. Welcome to the show. And
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Glad to be here. Very excited.
Great. And Colin is a health and wellness coach as well, coming to us from California.
Yes,
Thank you for being here for this special event.
Thanks for having me.
And also what our theme today is what is nutritional health has to do with relationships? And I'm going to be asking that question of our guest, who I'm going to introduce right now. Our guest today is Dr. John Gray. He is an author, a speaker, a television host, a relationship coach, and I'm sure many other things, which we're going to find out about. And he's joining us from California. Welcome to the show, Dr.
Well,
John.
thanks. I'm excited to spend this time with you. It's a pleasure.
It's great to have you with us. And of course, I thought about a little bit how to introduce you today, but I think most people probably already know you. Anybody that has touched any issues in their relationships, speaking for myself, and I think many millions of people in the country and in the world, since your books have been translated to, 40 different languages? By now, I think everybody should know who John Gray is, right?
Let's hope so.
So first I thought maybe I wouldn't even introduce you, but I can't do that, so I did. So, so you've been on Oprah, you've been on all the morning shows, you've been on The View, you've been basically everywhere, and you're doing a show every day. So my opening question to you, John, is really, in order for you to become who you have become, which I respect you very much, and I look up to you in terms of an expert. You have a PhD, but what I used to say, and I still say, that you have, from your journey, you have a PhD in how to do relationships. So as a child, when you were growing up, what were some of your challenges that you can recall that made you to be this awesome person today?
Well, I think that I don't know if it was the challenges when I was a kid, but it was, really I had a great mom and who could give me a lot of support. My dad was not there a lot, but my mom replaced him with a lot of mentors. So when I was 10, for example, I was the karate kid. I studied karate, and then I had a job, paper route. She would make sure there were different. She wanted me to be with a real sort of a beer drinking man to see how the world works, because my dad wasn't that way. So I had a really balanced family where my mom was, what was missing, she was providing for me, which is kind of like what I talk about relationships as well. If we want good relationships, we have to understand that we have to be responsible for our fulfillment. And from there, we can have successful relationships, as opposed to looking to somebody else to always fill us up and make us happy and fulfilled. The same thing is if you're not feeling good, and if you're not feeling healthy, and you don't have the right nutrition, then you don't have the right mood, you don't have enough energy, you don't have enough flexibility, and suddenly all of your good intentions to love someone sort of fall short.
Fantastic. Thank you, John. And I'm sure a lot of our viewers are really wondering, what was that moment in your life? And it's maybe the book, the Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus. Was that the book? I'm just kind of double checking this. Was that the book that when your journey or your career really has turned for the best?
Well, I think my career was always turned towards the best. When I was a 19-year-old, I became a teacher of transcendental meditation. My mentor was Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who at that time had gone to the Beatles, had become world famous. It had huge impact in bringing a lot of the wisdom of the East to the West. It was a time of integrating opposites, East, West. And then I went on to be his personal assistant and was very successful there, and then had to start completely over because I'd been a monk for 9 years, a celibate monk. And then I began to, my younger brother was bipolar, and meditation didn't help him. So I decided that I was going to study psychology and went out to California back in the 70s, and all these things were budding up, new psychologies, new therapies, Gestalt therapies. And I said, I'm going to learn this and help my brother heal his mental condition. Unfortunately, that didn't work. But in that journey of studying psychology, I became very successful as a counselor. And then after 9 years of developing my own message with counseling, then I wrote the book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And that elevated me to a world-class level. I mean, that took it to the whole world. But I think along the way, there's always been successes, but there's always been obstacles. It's never been just a freeway for me to be successful. I think anybody has to know that. If you want to step out of the status quo, you have to challenge yourself. You have to overcome things. You have to learn new things if you want to create a new life.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, John. So let me ask you about your new book, because it really fascinates me, because what you're addressing in your new book is really relationship between men and women in business. And it really fascinates me because I used to be part of corporate America for a long time, working for some of the biggest consulting firms in the world. And I'm noticing, and I'm sure that you're noticing too, John, that women really have come into power in the last decade or so. And how does that affect the relationships that are being developed or not developed in business? What's your opinion about that?
Well, there's two aspects in my message. One is, as women have gone into the workplace, it had literally raised women's stress levels. And this is now proven statistically in those companies, in those environments in the world where there's greater, quote, equality of men and women in the workplace, women's stress levels are the highest. Stress is, you'll see as part of the syndrome we're going to talk about today, one of the #1 critical elements for your health. So women's health is on the decline. Women's happiness is on the decline as women move into the world of success. Their success is way up. There's no doubt about that. But you've got to find balance in your life, and that's what I help men and women to understand, is how to find balance through their personal life. Good quality in their relationship can lower stress, but at the same time, the workplace was designed by men for men. It is basically a thousands-of-year-old culture that nurtures the hormones that are positive, have positive benefit for men, but not positive benefit for women. And that's got to change. It's going to take a while to change, but at least we can become aware of why women are stressed and help motivate women to find that balance. Otherwise, they don't experience satisfaction and happiness. And what I do in the book, Work With Me, is talk about the gender differences, and that's what gender intelligence is. Like we have creative intelligence, we have emotional intelligence. There's also gender intelligence, which is the ability to discern differences between men and women in a positive way, and then begin to find ways to support those differences and creating an expression of wholeness. But most important, to value what women bring to the table and what men bring to the table. And we're seeing that integration happening more and more. For example, one of the things that's happening today is there's more focus on the personal fulfillment of employees. Let's take care of our employees as opposed to slave labor. Let's take care of our employees. That's a feminine value. Historically, you go to work, you do the job, you get paid, you come home to be happy. What we're learning now is the workplace can be a positive environment for everybody. That's a feminine value, as opposed to just making the job more important than anything. What we're looking for is creating a greater sense of balance and wholeness. And in Work With Me, I talk about 8 blind spots. One of those being that, for example, in a survey of over 100,000 men and women from 60 Fortune 500 companies, we asked many questions, and we saw these blind spots, one of them being around why women don't feel valued. Over half the women did not feel they were appreciated and valued by men. 90% of the men said, of course women are appreciated. We appreciate them. So there's a disconnect in our communication skills. So what we want to do is create an environment in the workplace where communication shifts so everybody feels valued, because that's a common value that we all have, our own personal dignity. We want to feel we're doing something productive, and we want to feel valued.
Absolutely. That sounds fantastic. And I think one of the things that you also value, because I've seen some of your programs, but you put a lot of emphasis on our ability to listen.
That's one of the huge blind spots. Is we asked women what their biggest complaint is in personal relationships and in the workplace. The question is, do men listen? And most women say no. And of course, most men say, what are you talking about? Which is another expression of, you don't get me, you don't understand me. And this is one of those gaps, one of those blind spots. What does it mean to have a blind spot? You're driving in your car and you want to change lanes. You can create a collision if you don't realize there's certain areas that I cannot see instinctively, automatically, that my windows or whatever are not going to show me. So I need to look around and make sure that that area is clear. So when it comes to men and women, there's certain behaviors that are so instinctive to men and instinctive to women that we're not even conscious of how that might sound to the opposite sex, or what value they're bringing to the table, because we have our own values. And what are those values that are different, and how can we learn to appreciate them? That's the real goal of gender intelligence, is to truly value and appreciate what women bring to the table, what men bring to the table.
Yeah, great, John. I noticed something on commercial television that I would like to give us your feedback on. And the common theme that I've noticed is that in a lot of the shows on commercial television, more and more of the women are becoming in charge. And it's kind of an interesting phenomenon that I'm noticing. And the way they become in charge is that a lot of the movies and the shows obviously are cop shows, and they happen to be the people that are running the local office or whatever, and women are constantly beating up men. What is Hollywood trying to tell the public there?
Well, I think their readers are trying to give a progressive message that women can be in positions of authority. And certainly that doesn't reflect completely reality, but reality is moving into a direction of both men and women equally participating at higher levels of business. It wasn't until Margaret Thatcher, for example, in England became prime minister, people are thinking, how can a woman be prime minister? Then 15 years later, a little girl's growing up and a man is elected prime minister, and she says, how can a man be prime minister? We get conditioned by the media a lot. So those are some steps moving forward. Our whole focus today on allowing gay marriage, for example, we have to thank the media for that, because the media kept portraying gay people, and they're people. They have little differences here and there, but they're people. And what's wrong with that? And that gave permission for more gay people to come out of the closet. And then people started to see, oh, my good friend Dan, he's gay. Well, that's my good friend Dan. I guess there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing weird about that. So it was just a matter of bringing it out and making it aware. Part of everything to do with creating a better world is increasing our awareness of what is the truth, rather than live in these fantasy worlds. And one of the things I'm dedicated to as well is helping people become aware of why America is becoming one of the sickest countries in the world. What is going on with our dependence on drugs? We have to sort of wake up and go, hey, do you know that all these drugs have dangerous side effects? Do you know that people's quality of life has been going down, 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 not up, up, up? And do you know that if you go back 2,000 years ago, people's average age was 70 years old? Now, people don't know that, but they've digging up bones in India from Alexander the Great, from his soldiers, and the average age is 70 years old. Now, that means some were 90, some were 50. These people traveled all around in the worst conditions. People used to be much, much healthier a long time ago. This is an illusion. But when they went into the cities, and due to the filth of the cities, people did start getting infections. And medicine did help with antibiotics for a while, but now that's creating its own problem. The number 4 cause of death today is death by hospital. MRSA is a killer because we have antibiotics. We've been using that rather than something as simple as colloidal silver, for example, to kill off bacteria infections. But historically, people have been enormously healthy, and even today, in over 6 indigenous cultures that have been well studied, People are healthy at 100 years old, healthy at 100 years old on average. This is, the quality of life that we accept as good is nonsense.
I agree. So by now, I'm sure our live viewers are wondering, what is the connection between John Gray, Colin, Peter? So let's satisfy that curiosity right now. And what is this whole conversation that we're going to have for the rest of the show about nutritional health? So Colin, I'm really curious, and I'm sure our viewers are too. Yeah. What was your life like before you met Dr. Gray?
Yeah, well, first of all, Dr. John Gray has changed my life big time. I met him about 10 years ago, and through nutrition, he's really helped change the way that my brain works. And ever since I can remember, ever since I was a child in class, I had a terrible time concentrating. I couldn't sit still. Retaining any information was really tough for me. Reading was really hard. I'd read a page and then wouldn't even, realize what I had just read. So in my mid-teens, my parents actually ended up taking me to a doctor, and I was prescribed Adderall. And I was on that for about probably 6 to 9 months, and I actually ended up taking myself off of it without even telling my parents because I didn't like the way it made me feel. I had trouble eating, I had trouble sleeping, and so, ended up taking myself off that. So, I struggled for a few years before I was introduced to this nutritional technology. When I was about 21 years old, I'm 31 now, and through, this nutritional technology, these whey protein shakes from New Zealand, these John Gray minerals that John actually suggested for me, has absolutely changed my life.
Have you thought about taking your life?
Never.
Never?
No.
So it never got that tough?
No. I mean, there were times in my life where I was really, really low, and I thought that things wouldn't get better, but it never got to that point. But there were some very, very low times in my life. And one thing I always relied on for myself was sports. That was one thing that I always turned to. I was always an athletic kid, and I think a big reason because of that was because the things I suffered from in my brain, so I needed activity to sort of calm my mind.
Okay, got it. All right, so how did you meet Dr. Gray?
Through my dad.
Okay.
Yeah, through my parents.
Very interesting. And this was what, like over 10 years ago?
10 years, yeah, about 10 years ago now. When I was 21 was the first time I went on this, on these nutritional supplements.
And what is your life like today?
I mean, I can't complain. I live in San Diego. I live right on the beach. I surf, probably 5 or 6 days a week. I'm happier than I've ever been. I'm actually helping my dad and my brother research for new books. I'm learning more and more each day. I've never been more confident in the person I am. So, and I owe a lot of that to this nutrition, and a lot of that to John Gray, and he really has absolutely changed my life, and I've told him that numerous times, and I've done a bunch of calls with John, and I've worked with a lot of kids in the same position that I was in, and I'm just trying to share my story so that I can help other children out there and let them know that there is hope. There is hope.
One thing I want to add to what you just said is, and it's my intention is not to make you wrong, is that you changed your life.
Right.
Not John.
Yeah.
John was there to support you and to inspire you, but
totally.
You changed your life.
Right.
Okay, so take credit for that.
Okay, I'll take credit for that.
All right, so I'm curious. I'm curious just to ask you, John, what was happening when you was first introduced to Colin, and how did you begin to work with him?
Well, there's a little background to that, which is. My younger brother did commit suicide. He was bipolar and committed suicide. And I had spent many years of my life trying to help him and basically failed. I had been a celibate monk teaching spirituality, teaching yoga, teaching meditation, and I taught that to him. I taught it. It didn't help. It was nice, but it wasn't dealing with the condition. That's why I went to California then and started studying psychology, and I developed seminars and workshops and everything for basically to help my brother, and that didn't help, and he eventually committed suicide. I still was dedicated to say, I have to find a reason for this. This is a horrible thing. And I made it as a gift to him. It was my way of saying, I love you to Jimmy, that I'm going to find a solution to this so that people who have bipolar mental imbalance, it's a chemical thing. And to give them drugs, that's why he committed suicide. He said, John, the side effects of this drug are just too awful. He was doing lithium carbonate. And what I discovered later was other researchers in Europe had found remedies that were not being popularized. They were too cheap. You can't make any fortune on them. You can't pay for $300 million double-blind studies like the drug companies can afford. But there's simple nutrition. There's basic minerals. One of those minerals is lithium orotate. And lithium carbonate has side effects. You have to take it in toxic doses, low-dose lithium orotate, which is on the market. It's over the counter. It's not a prescription. It's not a drug. But most people think, oh, that's a drug. But it's not at all. That's the doctors prescribe the drug. But this is just basically a mineral supplement that's not available to most people, and they're not aware of it. So I'm dedicated to make people aware of many, many inexpensive natural solutions to provide the brain the extra nutrition. Colin, like my brother, like so many young people today, are geniuses. They're brilliant. If you look historically at all the geniuses of the past, they were all either bipolar, obsessive compulsive disorder. They had some imbalance, because when you have genius brain, you need better fuel. And you use up that fuel very quickly, and then you crash. And my brother just was crashing and decided to throw in the towel, which happens to so many people in their lives, young people today, more and more, because they're smarter, they're more brilliant. And what happens is you need more fuel in order to achieve that. Now, part of how I finally got it together was about 12 years ago, I had Parkinson's, and I went, hold on. I went to my doctor. They wanted to start giving me Parkinson's drugs, which we know does not cure it, does not help it. You just get worse and worse and worse. You eliminate symptoms. But I found natural solutions to it. You can go to your health food store and pick them up. You just have to know what to look for and the right amounts. And I took those, and I put my Parkinson's as long in the past. So I continue every day to take this nutrition. And when I did that, I realized that my whole life, I was missing a balance in my brain, because it was always hard for me to stay focused on something. I get easily distracted. And suddenly I could just read something, have such comprehension, and just relax into it. Then I realized, oh my gosh, this is one of the biggest challenges in relationships today. As women complain with men, they don't listen, they don't have focus. A man gets bored after a while, he gets distracted after a while, he gets antsy after a while. And this is because men and women have different physiology, different brain chemistry. And that's when I went on to write the book, The Mars and Venus Diet and Exercise Solution, because that book explains how food affects the physiology and how physiology is also affected by our relationships. So in a sense, you've got relationship over here to stimulate the brain chemicals of health and happiness. But on the other side, you've got to have the nutrition so that when you're stimulated, you can make those brain chemicals. And so many people today are just so smart that they run out of these minerals, and then they become the shadow, which is the opposite of who they are.
Mm-hmm. Sounds absolutely fascinating and right on. I actually made kind of similar conclusions. I dedicated my life 10 years ago to being awake and to consciousness, and that's what really my entire work is about. But I recognize that without paying attention to my own health and health period, becoming conscious and becoming awake is quite limited. It's just not as possible as it is if we give our body the nutrition that it requires to take care of itself.
And that knowledge of good nutrition, the real secrets of it are not yet known commonly. When people go to the store, they're addicted to the junk food. And one of the main reasons they feel addicted to it is high stress levels inhibit your body's ability to burn fat as a source of energy. So we now crave sugar. So we're drawn to all of these foods that actually are addictive. Everything which is packaged that has corn syrup in it is addictive, just like a cigarette. And your brain has to go back to it again and again, gradually changing your brain. The right nutrition added to that will change your brain back, and then you lose the addiction. But if you don't have the right balance to that imbalance, you'll always be addicted. And unfortunately, the hardest addiction is to junk food, because we're told it's okay. It's on the shelves. We assume it must be okay. And the actual ingredients, glucose, which is in there, the carbohydrate, the brain does need glucose. It's just a poisonous form of it. But the brain says, if that's all I can get, give it to me.
Yeah, fantastic. So I also can tell, I'm reading you loud and clear, Dr. John, that you walk this talk. I mean, it's very apparent, just the way you come across, just the way you look. I mean, I'm not even going to ask you how old you are because it doesn't matter. You look very young, and you come across very, very clear. And I think it should be a great example for people to also, the viewers that are watching, that there is a reason. There are all kinds of reasons to get on this plan of taking care of ourselves nutritionally and begin to change our habits. And I don't mean to beat up the media, but everything that you just said, John, I second. But in addition, the average American watches like 4 to 6 hours of television a day. And what do they get? They get the reinforcement of all of those things that you just talked about that we shouldn't even be doing, like fast food, drugs. I mean, that's all people get. It's like unbelievable. And
yes, here's something interesting. They've done research now on the brain, and after you've watched TV for 1 hour, the blood flow stops to the front part of your brain and only goes to the middle part of your brain, where you're 100% receptive to hypnosis and suggestion. You see, I can never be hypnotized. I've had the best hypnotist try to hypnotize me, and I'm unhypnotizable because my blood flow goes to the front part of the brain. But if people are passive and they just watch life and they don't make decisions and choices all the time, the front part of the brain shrinks, the middle part of the brain gets bigger, and they become receptive to suggestion. So they don't know why, but suddenly they see that and they go, I must have that. Oh, I see that. I must have that. And that's the whole basis of all the marketing and TV.
Yeah, there's a pizza commercial. Next thing you know, the person is dialing the number.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Wow, amazing. All right, so I think, Peter, you had something to share with us. Important.
Well, it's ironic to follow up in exactly what Dr. Gray was saying about drugs and this whole thing. This is a great book that I referenced called The Ultramind Solution by Dr. Mark Hyman. And basically what he says in here, he says that about half of what they talk about as far as drugs is correct. But these drugs don't cure the problem. They cover them up and just deal with the symptoms. So the core epidemic of broken brains, as he calls them, we have to ask a new set of questions. How do we come to this epidemic? Are we somehow genetically designed to be programmed to take drugs and various chemicals like that? And are really more drugs the answer, as opposed to what Dr. Gray is saying, is about new nutritional technologies to make up for this lack of thing? So he says basically the answer lies in the body by providing the body with these specific nutrients that I do want to go into with Dr. Gray as it relates to Colin, because I know we have lots of parents out there now that are super interested in the protocol. Now, for those of you that are tuning in for the first time, you notice the Tito syndrome. You might be wondering, what the heck is that? And Dr. Gray already alluded to it. Well, the Tito syndrome, the T stands for toxicity, the D stands for nutritional deficiency, the O stands for overweight, and the S stands for stress. And those four things working together are really one of the primary causes of why we're seeing this incredible decline in our mental health, our physical health, our spirituality, all of these very, very specific things. So Dr. Gray and I have worked for the last 10 years, and actually Colin has coached a lot of people and children through the protocol that he's been on that's really made a difference for him. So, John, why don't you share with the parents out there that are listening, like the importance, for example, of whey protein and lithium orotate and zinc and copper, and many of the things that you've recommended that Colin has actually used to help turn his life around, and in turn inspired other parents to use these same kinds of protocols on their children. Because although the picture looks bleak to many of us, it's really very, very hopeful now that, like John said, most people aren't aware of these natural alternatives and things that we can do. And that doesn't mean that we can completely replace drugs. We can't. But in many, many cases, kids are being medicated. As a matter of fact, there was a big article in the New York Times about 4 months ago just saying that they're now concerned that we are using prescription drugs as the first line of defense when maybe it should be the last line of defense. So, John, let's go into some of the protocols so that parents know that there really is hope, and what you've seen not just with Colin, but with many other kids that you've certainly worked with, and we've combined to help many, many kids already on this planet.
Well, let's start step by step. Part of your protocol in your book, you talk about deficiency. nutritional deficiency. And one aspect of that is we're not getting the nutrition. We're not eating the right foods that I was alluding to before. But also, the food itself, even if you're getting good food today, it's still deficient in minerals. UCLA has done this study just 20 years ago. You'd have to have one head of spinach, the amount of minerals and vitamins in a head of spinach 20 years ago. You have to fill up my room today with spinach to get that much. Basically, we are not getting enough minerals in our food. So mineral supplementation is essential. The problem with mineral supplementation is that 95% of all minerals that you see in the vitamin store, in the health food store, or when they stick it in your milk or they stick it in your food or whatever, it does not cross the blood-brain barrier. It doesn't get into your brain. It can help your body, but it doesn't help your brain. If you don't help your brain, that's where the condition is. The brain runs everything. So what has to happen is those minerals have to cross the blood-brain barrier. And Dr. Hans Nieper in Germany discovered minerals that are bonded to uric acid. Now, uric acid is something which is in mother's milk. And they take the minerals and they bond them to uric acid, and then those minerals cross the blood-brain barrier. Lithium, for example, is necessary for the balancing of dopamine and serotonin. The serotonin makes you happy. Lithium makes you motivated. Sometimes women are too motivated, which makes them less happy. Sometimes men are too happy and less motivated, and so they become passive, and then their hormones go out of balance with low testosterone, and depression sets in. So what we want to do is understand we got to get minerals into the brain. And Dr. Nieper discovered if you bond them to uric acid, they will cross. So lithium, which is high in beets, for example, will cross the blood-brain barrier if it is bonded to uric acid. Now, that's interesting why it's so high in beets, because that's where we get our sugar. And this is one of the problems today, is that when people eat sugar, it immediately depletes the brain of lithium, because the processed sugar, the brain uses up lithium, which is why in nature, beets have the highest amount of lithium. Unfortunately, no longer today, there's just not enough there. And if you take the supplements like lithium carbonate, it doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier. But if you bond it to uric acid, it does. Zinc, as you mentioned, zinc is so important. Now, all mothers have heard about heavy metal toxicity, which is why Peter talks so much about cleansing. And I think it's so important to help the body to detoxify these toxins. Just if you're living by a freeway, you're getting lead poisoning that's coming off of the tires, asbestos poisoning, mercury poisoning. It's in our water. It's around us. It gets into our system, goes into the brain, and kicks zinc out of the brain. So we want to practice, learn nutrients to get the toxins out. One simple one is starting every day with a glass of water with lemon and aloe vera, and just that will start cleansing your liver, cleansing your body, so you can start removing these heavy metals. Cilantro is something that can take away heavy metals. Zeolite is a very good one for taking away heavy metals. There's a lot of things that will help to take the heavy metals out, but most importantly is get the zinc into the brain, and zinc itself will kick those heavy metals out. And zinc is necessary for every function in terms of making brain chemicals. Magnesium is necessary for memory, but getting the magnesium over the blood-brain barrier is, again, bonding it to uric acid. Calcium to give the brain energy, speed. When people are having Alzheimer's and dementia, for example, their brains are slowing down. We've all had that experience of we have a thought, it's just on the tip of our tongue, but we just can't get it. And maybe we get it tomorrow. The brain is taking a long time to get there.
I had it earlier on the show. You probably noticed.
Well, Dr. Gray, also, not to interrupt, I want to make sure also that we make the distinction. A lot of people think, I always say, what if you didn't know what you think you know? So a lot of people have an impression of minerals like iron and calcium and magnesium. But what we're basically talking about here are trace minerals. Just spend a few seconds differentiating that so the viewers really understand there really is a difference in what trace minerals and why in the heck they're so important.
Well, see, trace minerals are what the vegetables used to be filled with. There's 70 trace minerals for thousands and thousands of functions in the brain. And these trace minerals are no longer available in the food we eat today. Only 3 major minerals are there that they use for fertilizers, and all the other minerals are not available. And so without those trace minerals as the cofactors to activate enzymes, enzymes produce all of the functions, but the cofactor is the trace minerals, as well as the macro minerals. They're good too, that we just mentioned as well. So on one hand, we've got minerals, and also another trace mineral, which is very, very important, is chromium. Chromium is very important for the upregulation of receptor sites in the brain. That was a big factor for me to help the dopamine function in my brain. You see, when you can't focus or you don't have the ability to stay focused, there's some form of inhibited dopamine function. You get it for a while and then it goes away. You get it for a while and it goes away, and that causes the ups and downs that people will go through with their moods and so forth. And chromium helps the body adjust. It's well known that it helps people with blood sugar issues as well, but it also helps the brain. So those are important minerals. Now, on the other hand, the minerals are just activating the enzymes to utilize protein. Protein is essential for making all of your brain chemicals. The brain chemicals of dopamine are made from phenylalanine and tyrosine, and the brain chemical serotonin is made from tryptophan. Now, these amino acids are most concentrated in a form that goes right to the brain in whey protein, but not just any whey protein. You can take whey protein from cows that are eating corn, for example, non-organic cows, and the tryptophan levels are much lower. But if you get cows like from Australia and New Zealand, where they're grass-fed and they're spacious and they're not mistreated, you can actually measure higher tryptophan levels in the dairy product. Now, the interesting thing is everybody can buy whey, cheap whey, but it doesn't work unless it's raw whey. It's called undenatured. As soon as you process whey with high heat, it becomes toxic. The same thing with pasteurized milk. Your pasteurized milk used to be a great substance for thousands of years. Civilizations have lived on the cow. In India, for example, they worship the cow because they get everything from milk. When somebody got sick for 5,000 years in India, they were put on a diet of primarily just whey protein. Science has shown that when you have undenatured whey protein, those amino acids are easily digested, they cross the blood barrier, and they go right into the brain. And, there's some studies that have shown just whey protein alone is more effective than an antidepressant if somebody's depressed. I mean, it's amazing how quickly things can change, but when you're taking natural substances to stimulate healthy brain function, you also have to do the behaviors. You'd have to go for a walk for 20 minutes 3 times a week, for example. None of the nutrition is going to work if you're sitting in a dark room doing nothing, watching TV all the time. But at least you get, the foundation so that when you start doing 5-minute walk, your body goes, yeah, I got the nutrients for this. I'm ready to move. I can do this. As Colin was saying, he loves his exercise because the exercise is stimulate all these great brain chemicals, and he has the nutrition so it doesn't stimulate it and then run out. He has plenty of that support. So other ingredients that I love for the brain are, one is goji berries. Goji berries are becoming more and more popular in the grocery stores today. It was actually 20 years ago that I helped found the company that brought it to the West, because I used to climb the mountains of the Himalayas, and one time I was dying up there due to hypothermia, and these people rescued me. It was one of those big, tall mountains, and they were old people, and they were so strong and vibrant. And what were they drinking 5 times a day was a cup of warm tea made out of goji berries. These berries, one berry has 500 times more concentration than orange. We think of an orange to get your vitamin C. Go for a handful of great goji berries. So you have to have the vitamin C. For one, it stimulates your adrenal gland, which allows you to produce more energy, healthy energy, and burn fat. But 2 is when you have any kind of mental imbalance, lack of focus, moodiness, withdrawn, shutting down, can't comprehend, learning challenges, there are always some infections in the brain. Infections cause inflammation, and vitamin C in its natural form and a natural source is like 10,000 times more potent than going to the store and just buying vitamin C, if you can actually get it in that raw form from nature. And goji berries have been used for thousands of years. The mythology of goji berries is the people who built the Great Wall of China. They're very poor, but they were sustained by their goji berries. It gave them strength and vitality. Yeah. So those are some of the key factors, along with omega-3 essential fatty acids. Now, there's a lot of different ways you can get that. Chia seeds is one, flax seeds is another. We know the fish oils are important. A lot of parents will try that and they go, well, I tried it, it didn't make such a difference. Well, that's because you weren't doing the minerals and the raw amino acids from whey protein, and for some people, casein protein as well. That's the amino acid that's in cheese. That will allow you 4.5 hours of sustained energy, whereas whey protein will give you an hour or two of energy automatically. But that will also be very helpful. But if you can find raw casein, that's even better. But it doesn't work if it's not raw. It has to be undenatured. If it's just simply pasteurized, it actually causes more harm than good.
Yeah, great, John. This is absolutely fantastic information, and I'm sure our viewers will absolutely love it, because we've been bombarded by the viewers asking us to start talking about the solutions and protocol, and we are certainly talking about it. But I feel like saying something that you can correct me, but this is just coming to me right now in the present moment, which is what I want to say is the food that we are getting at the grocery stores and also at fast food places, and nobody has really said this before like this, but it's not real food. Can we say that it's not real food?
Absolutely.
It looks like real food. It tastes like real food, but it's not real food. Because I think the general public has this idea that food hasn't changed. It still looks the same. It still tastes the same. It must be the same.
Well, you know, Steve, I've talked in the upcoming book, and John's been kind enough to read some of it and really likes what I've said. But basically,
I love what you said. It's brilliant. Everybody should read your book.
Great. Well, but deficiency now, and I've said this, and John, this is my new phrase that I actually mentioned in the book, food will simply never be enough again. And I want to clarify that when we're talking about whey protein and these other things, we're talking about combinations. So like John says, if you just do, even if you do undenatured whey protein from New Zealand, unpasteurized, the best in the world, without the trace minerals, you're still not going to get what the body needs that came from nature hundreds of millions of years ago when the volcanoes used to spew up these rare earth elements. By the way, trace minerals are basically the periodic table. Not basically, they are the periodic table. And what the plants used to eat, then the animals would eat the plants, and then the animals that ate the plants were healthy. I mean, a brontosaurus could, they weighed 50 tons and eat grass and leaves. You couldn't possibly do that today. I mean, one of those things would, eat all the grass in Denver, let's say. So it really, really makes a difference. I want to turn to Colin for just a minute, Steve. I think it's really important that...
Great, I want you to do the same.
Because he's been... No, because just let the parents know that we know that this is not anecdotal, what John... just share the quick story about when you were surfing 2 years ago in Costa Rica and what happened to you and how you know this is real.
Yeah, well, I was in Costa Rica and had an incident where all my stuff was stolen, including all of my nutritional supplements. And within, literally within 24 hours, I felt myself down again, feeling, depression that I had dealt with, most of my life that I had talked about, a lot of that brain chemistry stuff. And, so I actually ended up ending my trip, coming home, as quickly as possible. And as soon as I got home, I got back on the products. And as soon as I was back on the products, I was feeling good again. And even today, if I go, a day or two without taking the products for some reason, I can feel myself already slipping back into some of the ways that I used to feel, 10 years ago. So there's, it's the most important thing in my life. Every single day I wake up, I start with one of those New Zealand whey protein shakes, aloe vera juice with some water, and the John Gray minerals. And it's something that I absolutely have to do, and it's something that I choose to do, because without it, I wouldn't be the same person that I am today.
So again, thank you, John, for teaching Colin all of that, and for the viewers out there. So find a whey protein,
let me mention,
go get trace minerals and these other things. So I'm sorry, John, go ahead.
Oh, Colin said the John Gray minerals. He's just saying that because I told them about them.
Right.
Yeah,
really,
exactly.
It was Dr. Hans Nieper who discovered these. They're not common in the health food stores. You have to search them out. But it's the lithium orotate. He's doing 3 little capsules of that a day. It's very important. It's also all of the other minerals bonded to orotic acid, magnesium orotate, zinc orotate, potassium orotate, chromium. And then he's also doing all 70 of the trace minerals. Those are the basic, that's the mineral supplement. as Peter says, food is not enough anymore. One of my sayings is, I have breakfast for my nutrition, and the rest of the day is for recreation.
Is there anything else that we want to tell the viewers about solutions
Yes.
that they can use?
Yes, I have a very exciting suggestion. Every parent can go to your grocery store today and easily buy chia seeds, CHIA. And what you do is you take a third of a cup of chia seeds and then mix it with 2 cups of water and stir it up. It becomes a gel in 10 minutes. Put it in the refrigerator, it becomes a gel. And then when you make your superfood shake in the morning for your children and for yourself, add a couple tablespoons of that chia seed, and you're getting enough omega-3 as if you just had a piece of salmon in a natural form that's purely assimilated. And in your superfood shake, you have to put a little raw sugar or some kind of natural sweetener in there to stimulate the brain. And see, sugar is not bad if it's in a very moderate amount. So no more than a couple of teaspoons or even 3 teaspoons of raw sugar or some kind of sweetener that's natural, not artificial. And that chia seed gel will prevent that sugar from causing any blood sugar spike. Even if you're complete diabetic, you could take the chia seed and it will slow down the release of carbohydrate. What you make oatmeal for your children, put some chia seeds in there. Oatmeal, while it's good, also can cause blood sugar spikes, and your children feel like they just had a bunch of candy or sweets even. We have to learn that blood sugar is a major condition today, and that's why, when you make this superfood shake, you want to make sure it's low sugar, but it needs to taste good. And using chia seeds and getting that omega-3, which is high in something called DHA, which the FDA even says is good for increasing intelligence of children.
So for the parents out there, I want to clarify what Colin was just saying is that the things you'd want to look for would be a whey protein unddenatured shake, let's say from New Zealand. You want to get a mineral supplement that would ideally contain 70 of these trace minerals. You want to look for something that's naturally sweetened, not artificially sweetened, no artificial coloring. Very, very important. When we're eating our food, we must go and get supplementation that's available certainly in health food stores and various places like that, and put these combinations together to give yourself the greatest chance to make up for all of these nutritional deficiencies, which I've highlighted and Dr. Gray has certainly touched on today. And I think the important thing is that you're going to kind of have to make your own formula, make your own product per se. There isn't necessarily something you can just go and buy off the shelf, but it is worth taking a little bit of time, get the chia seeds, get the trace minerals, get this unddenatured whey protein, and those things together can make such an enormous difference in your life. And I want parents to know that it's an easy and simple solution. If you just would do one thing in the morning, instead of you giving your children cereal, which I've talked about before, dead flakes in a cardboard coffin, if you simply gave them a shake from New Zealand with minerals, etc., you probably would have kids that would react just the way that Colin has reacted in terms of his challenges with concentration, focus, and all of those kind of things. So it's not like there's a product per se. It's more putting the combinations together that anyone can do. It's not complicated, and that really becomes the solution. Do you agree, Dr. Gray?
Oh, I completely agree. And what you do is you start with that, and if you don't get the full results, you add on a few other things. One of the things I'd add on to that, if that wasn't doing the full trick, I even do it from time to time. I start every day with the cleansing drink. I start every day with the superfood shake for the last 12 years. And occasionally I'll be during my day, I'm noticing my mind spacing out a little bit. If I'm reading something and I'm getting distracted, instantly I just go and I take some vitamin C and grapeseed extract. Grapeseed extract also, it's known to take away inflammation when people have pain in their body. But actually, anytime you're feeling distracted and not able to focus and be present, or you're feeling irritable or angry, what's going on is there's some inflammation going on in the brain. And grapeseed extract and vitamin C can assist the body in dealing with that inflammation.
Okay, John, so if I'm looking for my soulmate, what should I be taking?
You should be coming to MarsVenus.com every day and listening to how to
Okay.
There's a lot to learn about relationships that goes beyond nutrition. But definitely, if you're having what we've suggested here, a man, since you're a man, if you're amped on this stuff, your focus, your presence is there. Women are so appreciative of it. You know, it's when I discovered all this about 12 years ago that I reversed my Parkinson's. My wife said, "You're a new man." And I said, "No, I'm the same guy. I'm just not shaking all the time." She said, "No, no, no. You know, I'm listening. You're not getting bored. You're not interrupting all the time." So one thing is for men to know that women are different, like we talked about earlier in the interview. But the other is to have the fuel so you can actually do those things and have the energy and excitement and motivation to want to do those things. And that's called romance.
Fantastic. All right, so Colin, I'm curious about, since you're still very young, and so the people that you coach, since you are a health and wellness coach, what's the demographic, like the type of people that you coach?
I've coached anywhere from 10-year-olds to 75-year-olds.
Okay, and in terms of the percentage, what would you say? 80% of it are younger people, like your age or younger?
Well, in this instance, for dealing with brain chemistry issues, I would say probably 90% of them are younger than I am by quite a few years.
And how do you get their attention?
I relate to them. I tell them I've been there. I've been in the same position as you. I know exactly what you're going through. And I think that really hits home with those kids, because I remember when I was their age, when I was in that position, I didn't think there was any way out. I felt like it was the end of the road. And so telling them, look, I've been there, I understand what you're feeling, I think really helps us relate, even though, I might be 10, to 15 years older than some of these kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I still remember when I was a teenager, you couldn't actually tell me anything that I didn't already know.
Right.
So, and in terms of listening, like, we were talking to John about how important listening is.
Right.
I, as a teenager, I wouldn't listen to anybody or anything except myself.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to bring this up because I know this is very challenging in terms of coaching.
Right.
Because people have to be, open. I mean, we're talking about this all the time on the shows that, I feel that this message that we are creating and continue to create goes out to the universe. It goes out to the ether. But not everybody's antenna is picking it up. I mean, they're picking it up, but it's not landing. Do you know what I mean? For whatever reason. So you have to be So I'm still searching for all the conditions, and some of the conditions we talked about today, you've got to have the nutritional stuff in your body, and your system has to be cleansed. It has to be clean. It has to have everything that it needs to operate the way it was designed to operate. Who designed this thing anyway?
John, you want to go into that one?
Help us out.
Yeah, help us out.
Who designed this machine of ours?
Not me. Sometimes in my talks when I'm explaining the biological differences between men and women, I say to the women, now women, I see a few of you are getting frustrated. Don't get mad at me. I'm just telling you what it is. This is just how we're designed.
Yeah. Don't kill the messenger, right?
Right.
Yeah, so, we're still searching and exploring what does it take? Because, people that are awake and conscious, like myself and you and John and everybody here and a lot of people that are watching, that's not challenging. Those people are going to pick this up, understand it, because it's clear. It will resonate with people. I am interested in exploring what is it going to take to have this message to get to the people that are sitting on the couch believing that the store that they're going to go to this evening after the evening news is real food?
Well, let me address that to the listeners or the viewers all around the world. I'm going to ask you two questions. The first one, I like to use this all the time, is what if you didn't know what you think you know? And more importantly, what if everything you thought you knew was wrong? Because, Steve, that's really what we're dealing with here. I mean, my whole goal is, when I started speaking 10 years ago to 4 people, and I said, I want to change the world, everybody laughed at me. Well, it's really starting to happen with the help of colleagues like Dr. Gray, and even Colin has coached hundreds and hundreds of people, kids, and have really, really made a difference. We can make a difference. We just have to start like one person at a time. That's basically the only way we can do it, is awareness.
Right.
And that one person is you.
Right.
I remember when I was in my early 50s and late 40s, 12 years ago, and I had gained about 20 pounds. And my brothers were this way. It was the way the family was. And then I started going on this program. I personally lost about 17 pounds. I mean, just in a few weeks, like in a month, 17 pounds. I was a different person. Everybody said, what happened? You look great. What happened? And I just told them what I did. And then everybody started doing it. I've had thousands and thousands of people just, this is over 12 years, be inspired to be healthier, to find their ideal weight, to be energized, have brain focus, mood control, all these things, because they see an embodiment of it. If you walk your talk, you naturally inspire those people who are ready. And I think that people become ready when they hit bottom. Some people just won't hear it until they hit bottom. And the bad news and the good news is clearly in America, we have hit bottom. And the good news is that there is hope and there are answers.
Yeah, thank you, John. Actually, we're coming to the end of our Conscious Hour, so I really want to thank Dr. John Gray. Thank you for being here with us from California. We really appreciate your presence here. You made a lot of recommendations, and your book and everything else that you presented here today is huge value, I believe, to the public. So thank you so much. I also want to thank Peter and also Colin to fly in here for the show. That was fantastic, and you made a huge contribution.
Thank you.
As well as everybody here in the studio and sitting back there in the technical booth, and also everybody that's operating the cameras and all the technical crew, and of course our viewers. And if there's anything that we said, did, or anything that you felt that touched, moved, and inspired you, please go to the New Health Conversation TV, newhealthconversation.tv website, and just interact with us by leaving us comments or asking questions. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next edition of the New Health Conversation TV. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Was killing myself with the food I eat, toxic to my health, till I got the news. There's another path that I could choose, and now I